Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of this news week, it is about time to look forward to the coming week. Welcome to this week's edition of Looking Forward. This show is about stories that are shaping up over the coming days and weeks, news that is developing and would have consequences for your life as well as mine, stories that shape India's and world's politics, economics going forward. So let's get going. Tonight's show packs 4 stories that you should look forward to this week. In fact, story number 1 is on the upcoming visit of UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer to India. Expect operationalization of the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. The next story would be coming in from the Indian Navy, preparing to commission its second state-of-the-art anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft Androth on the 6th of October, affirming India's role as a blue water power in the Indian Ocean region. Story number 3 tonight is about the Ladakh High Power Committee, which is all set to meet on 6th of October to resolve the deadlocks on special status and statehood. And finally, the story is about the Afghan foreign minister's visit to India. It's the first since the Taliban took over in Afghanistan. Let's begin with the headlines first. Internet shutdown as Cuttack tense after violence during Durga idol immersion. VHP calls for a punt.
Whatever happens, at the end of the day, there has got to be a trade understanding with the United States. It is, much of the world has reached those understandings. But it has to be an understanding where our bottom lines, our red lines are respected.
On US trade deal, Jaishankar draws Delhi's red lines amid Trump tariff aggression, says that there are some things that are non-negotiable. 11 dead as heavy rain landslides hit Darjeeling, roads blocked. Horrific video shows how key bridge collapses. Chaos on 2 Air India flights. DGCA probes Air India Boeing Dreamliner's rat deployment incident. Another London to Delhi flight also detects tech glitch. Big impact of Republic TV's expose of killer cough syrup syndicate. 4 states halt manufacturing. Doctor who prescribed drug arrested. Ladies and gentlemen, in just 3 days, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will arrive in India for a 2-day visit. His first since assuming office and the signing of the landmark Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or it's also known as the CETA, in July this year. This agreement has already transformed trade dynamics, slashing tariffs on Indian exports by up to 70% and unlocking billions in bilateral trade, with an ambitious goal to double it by 2030. From processed foods to gems and jewelry, Indian industries are to reap the benefits. However, operationalization of CETA has its own challenges, and Starmer's visit aims to iron these out while deepening ties in defense, fintech, as well as artificial intelligence. Now, with discussions on the India Middle East Economic Corridor, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, and sensitive issues like fugitives and extremism also on the table. This visit could redefine global supply chains and set a template for India's trade with Europe. Have a look at what this means for both the countries.
Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, will be on a 2-day visit to India starting from the 8th of October.
I appreciate it. Let's do a handshake on the steps here.
This will be Starmer's first visit to India after he took on as the Prime Minister and since India and United Kingdom signed the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement this year in July. With CETA in place, India has a lot to gain as duty on products that stood up to 70% has turned nil. Experts argue that despite gains for both parties, the CETA has seen some teething issues for operationalization. Harshvi Pant spoke about the importance of the visit as it will aid the operationalization of CETA.
For both sides at this point in time, it is important to operationalize the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement that the two sides have signed and that the two nations believe are going to be the most important agreement that India has signed in a long time and the UK has signed in a long time post-Brexit. So I think that operationalization and how some of the sticking points get addressed within that, including the problem with CBAM and the problem of investments would be something that the two sides would be focusing on because the ambition is huge to double bilateral trade numbers, to ensure that critical sectors in both economies, the labor-intensive ones in India, the tech-incentive ones from the US, from the UK, get entry into each other's markets, which has been the framework for this agreement. That has to be now operationalized on the ground. And I think the two sides during this visit would be working on this. Apart from that, there'll be defense and security, which will be also feature during the talks because that relationship has also grown.
Speaking on India's prospects for the India-Middle East economic corridor in a turbulent region, he pressed upon the China factor.
See, this is where India has been trying to work very, very closely with its European partners to ensure that the way America has American prospects have become uncertain, and the way tariffs have become the main instrument of operation from Washington. Can India and its European partners build a strong supply chain resilience? The supply chains that are being built and reconfigured, that are being rebuilt and reconfigured at this time of grave disruption, somehow become more resilient. And for India and the UK, the two sides will have to work much more closely together to ensure that some of these sectors like pharmaceuticals, IT, emerging tech, green technologies, all of this gets benefited because in both these, in all of these sectors, both India and the UK have competitive advantage, and the two sides can build on those advantages to configure a supply chain which is less dependent on one or two critical actors and therefore more resilient.
A contentious issue between India and the United Kingdom regarding carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM, is also on the cards.
I think this will be one of the more important points of discussion during this visit because that element has not been addressed by the CETA pact, and I think many in India are worried that CBAM can raise costs for critical labor-intensive sectors like steel, like aluminium, and that is going to impact India adversely, Indian exporters adversely in these sectors. So clearly, I think for Indian policymakers, this is going to be a big issue to resolve as India and the UK move forward. As of now, a framework has not emerged to resolve this problem, but the expectation would be that once you have the top leadership in both countries invested in resolving this problem, something or the other should come out, and this visit will perhaps lay the groundwork for that framework to emerge.
Professor Madhav Nalapat emphasized the importance of a trade deal for both the nations.
That the UK needs a trade deal with India, and India would also welcome a trade deal with the UK. For one thing, it would serve as a wake-up call to the European Union, which is some of whose members are making impossible demands. So the European Union should not fall into a trap of listening to the members who are making very generous to themselves demands. But they should understand that there has to be a mutually acceptable agreement. So in that context, an India-UK deal is of course very welcome. And I would say that I would strongly urge both governments to conclude that. And I am quite confident under Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this will be done.
He highlighted India's demands on fugitives as well as extremists.
The UK has made a lot of money by serving as a kind of a safe haven for people who are accused of financial fraud. And for example, Nirav Modi's case is an obvious case of large-scale financial fraud involving a public sector bank. And the public has lost very badly as a consequence of that. Government has had to bail it out and pay and give a lot of taxpayer money to it. And as a consequence, the taxpayers have to pay more for the sake of basically repaying the banks for the mistake they made in giving loans to Nirav Modi, mistake which they made willingly because some officers were conniving. Now, these officers have been punished, but not Nirav Modi. The Khalistanis are a threat to the UK itself, quite frankly. One day, some of them will turn against the UK. And it's a grave risk to the UK. Secondly, it's a grave risk to the reputation of the UK that it serves as a kind of a breeding ground, as it were, for those active in terror networks against friendly democracies, especially the world's most populous country and the world's most populous democracy, therefore, India. So I think the UK needs to be a little more proactive. Canada has been proactive.
The MEA in its statement has also stated that Keir Starmer and Prime Minister Modi will also attend the Global FinTech Fest in Mumbai and deliver keynote addresses and engage with businesses and industry leaders on the opportunities presented by the India-United Kingdom Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. Speaking on how this is one of the most important partnerships, especially for the United Kingdom after Brexit, this is what former diplomat Surendra Kumar had to suggest.
We should welcome the visit of the British Prime Minister. It has got several dimensions. The first time he is visiting India after becoming Prime Minister. The first time after Prime Minister visit to UK in July, when we signed a very important CETA, which is Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement. So that agreement is very important for the simple reason that we have done it for the first time with one of the G7 countries. And as you know, only this year beginning we have replaced UK as the fourth largest economy. For us to have trade agreement with UK and also terms and conditions of agreement, which could be a template for signing similar agreements with other European countries. After Brexit, that means going out of EU, UK has been having problems in their trade and economic conditions. For them to sign agreement with India is a very positive sign.
He further highlighted how India must also be vigilant of immigration sensitivities of Europe.
Because of the new H-1B visa regime in USA, many people who are wanting to go there are now reluctant because the fee has been increased to $100,000, which many companies are not willing to. So UK is an alternative that these techies, these technological advanced, educated people who are dreaming to go to USA can have an alternative to go to UK. UK has been one of the most favorite place for higher education. All our national leaders, from Gandhiji to Nehruji, they all studied there. Cambridge and British University, Oxford and London School of Economics, we have huge number of people who have risen in life.
The former UK ambassador spoke about how Europe must see India differently now and how India can have a role in the peace process for the Ukraine-Russia war.
Keir Starmer's visit to India is an important one. And it's not only just a signal coming from the British, it's a special one, yes, because of the past relationship between India and Great Britain. At the same time, it's a signal from the Europeans, because the Europeans, and this is my word, are rediscovering India, or they are discovering India step by step, because you should never forget, there is a certain, well, the British have a certain past with India, yes, but the other Europeans much less. And the Europeans now are discovering India, which is a fascinosum, as some people call it, a country with plenty of contradictions, but a country which has a certain belief in itself and which has taken an enormous development in the last 10, 20 years. And this is the signal there. In my youth, I'd been learning India is governed as the Soviet Union has been governed, the same economic system, the Gosplan.
India and United Kingdom, with this visit of the UK Prime Minister, can write a new chapter in the supply chain reordering of the globe. And hence, what comes out of this two-day visit would be closely watched. Many suggest that if the CETA is operationalized, it could serve as a template for India's trade agreement with the rest of Europe. With prospects open in finance, artificial intelligence, pharmaceutical research, engineering and fintech, a few teething issues on the fugitive repatriation and extremism front should not deter the two partners.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is undoubtedly a moment of immense pride for India as the Indian Navy prepares to commission its second state-of-the-art anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft Androth on 6th of October at Visakhapatnam. The nation is taking a bold leap forward in asserting its maritime dominance with over 80% indigenous components. Androth embodies Prime Minister Modi's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and signals India's growing might as the preeminent blue water navy in the Indian Ocean region. From safeguarding over 11,098 kilometers coastline to leading as the net security provider, this marks a pivotal step towards India's ambitious goal of a 200-strong naval fleet by 2035. Here's a closer look at how Androth is steering India's maritime power to new horizons.
What you just saw now is the official video released by the Indian Navy of the Androth anti-submarine craft as it is set to commission its second state-of-the-art shallow water warship at Naval Dockyard, Visakhapatnam on 6th of October 2025. The commissioning ceremony will be presided over by Vice Admiral Rajesh, Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief Eastern Naval Command, as the event will mark the formal induction of the second of the 16 ASW SWC ships into the Indian Navy. In its previous avatar, INS Androth served the nation with distinction for over 27 years before being decommissioned. The commissioning of the new Androth honors the legacy and spirit of a predecessor with a modern avatar. Built by Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers Limited, Kolkata, with over 80% indigenous components, Androth is a testament to the Government of India's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and a shining symbol of India's growing maritime self-reliance. Speaking about the importance of this induction, this is what Commodore G.J. Singh, a Navy veteran, had to say.
We always lacked in the underwater arm warfare because we did not have the sufficient number of submarines or even for that matter, to counter any enemy attack in the shallow waters of our coastline. Submarines are a very lethal threat to our shipping, and therefore the anti-submarine warfare shallow water crafts, they play a very significant role in the defense of a country, especially when it comes to low intensity maritime operations or for coastal surveillance. Even they can be used for mine laying operations or shallow water operations, rescue operations, and things like that. You see, the image of the Indian Navy is now a very powerful one in terms of when it comes to being called a blue water navy. We have a large fleet of surface crafts or the ships. We have almost three aircraft carriers. We have a sufficient number of submarines, and therefore when we introduce two ships like frigates like Hemgiri and Nilgiri last month, and now we are introducing this shallow watercraft, what is called the shallow watercraft, anti-submarine warfare shallow watercraft. I think this shows how we are now advancing when it comes to our naval power. Not only that, I would say that it has enhanced the image of the Indian Navy when we add ships at such a frequency into our fleet worldwide.
Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha also highlighted the larger plan of the Navy to secure India's maritime boundary from any submarine threat.
Well, this is a indigenously built, it's called corvette, but I think the performance is almost like a anti-submarine frigate. These are meant for shallow water operation. As you know, that any adversaries, diesel submarines will normally be lurking around in shallow waters, and therefore we need to strengthen our capability of finding the submarine in shallow waters. So this is an extremely good design, and the equipment are fairly modern, and I would think that about 90% it is indigenous. Even the engines are diesel engine, which are made here in India, and that's a big thing. The sonar system is very advanced. Again, it is an indigenous sonar system built and developed by a naval officer who was also a scientist. And it has got fair amount of anti-submarine weapons to prosecute the submarine. So I think that this is a very good addition to our countermeasure against the submarines in shallow waters. These are fairly state-of-the-art stealth frigates. And these are moving as per the Navy's maritime capability perspective plan. And it's not that it is happening all of a sudden, because you can't build ships all of a sudden. These are all long-term projects, and it is just happening that they're all fructifying about almost the same time.
Both Commodore G.J. Singh and Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha highlighted the visionary, forward-looking leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to enable this change.
Our Prime Minister is a visionary, and he has envisioned very rightly the importance of the naval power, because most of the world countries, the countries in the world, have ruled the other nations through the naval power. And if you go back into the history, you find it was a naval power with which the European nations, they colonized the rest of the world. So I think the naval power and naval progress that is on the mind of our Prime Minister is a very great vision when it comes to uplifting country out of that image of poverty, image of a weak country. I think this is something which Prime Minister has envisioned very well. No other Prime Minister in our history has given so much of impetus to the Indian Navy as our present government and present Prime Minister is doing. Prime Minister Modi seems to be understanding the significance, the importance of the naval power. And that is why you find that India's overall image has gone very high in the internationally or in the international communities.
Well, let me tell your viewers that the Navy's Atmanirbharta has commenced in 1960s. All our ships are built in India. The last of the 2 ships which are built in Russia, they have already arrived. And no more ships, including the aircraft carrier, are being built in India. So Navy is a very good example of Prime Minister Modi's Atmanirbhar project. And now the rate at which the ships are being produced is increased. As I mentioned in your earlier question, that 2 shipyards are producing same ships, same class of ships. So now there'll be more number of ships produced in the same time. So I think that as far as Atmanirbharta is concerned, Navy is way ahead of other 2 services because we started very early. And from the time the Prime Minister has given a push, it has become even further. And you will see that once the Sagarmala project fructifies, you will find that even the other parts of maritime power, which means that the merchant ships and tankers and shipyards and the hinterland connectivity, all that is improving at a very rapid rate, and the result will be seen in next 3-4 years.
As the Indian Navy commissions India's second state-of-the-art anti-submarine warfare craft, Androth, one must also look at Navy's expansion plans. India has set a target of expanding naval strength to over 200 warships and submarines by the year 2035, with the possibility of reaching 230 by the year 2037. This expansion is very much needed to affirm India's role as the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region and to protect its 11,098-kilometer long coastline. As India welcomes the commissioning of Androth, India's posturing as the primary blue water navy in the Indian Ocean is only getting stouter and punchier.
The icy heights of Ladakh, India's strategic outpost, protests have erupted, shaking the region 5 years after its union territory status. Now, 24th of September clashes in Leh laid bare a deep-seated demand for autonomy. The Leh Apex Body and Kargil Democratic Alliance are pushing for statehood, 6th schedule protections, separate Lok Sabha seats, and job security to shield Ladakh's tribal identity from outsider influx. Now, as Delhi's high-powered committee prepares to meet, the trust hangs by a thread. The alliances have rejected Article 371 tweaks as inadequate. With China and Pakistan looming, unrest in this Himalayan stronghold threatens more than local stability. It risks national security. Now, here's our in-depth report from Leh.
Ladakh, India's icy fortress against the twin threats of China and Pakistan, is at the forefront of unrest rooted in revolt. 5 years after its designation as a union territory, demands for greater autonomy have led to a standoff. The demands roar louder. A legislature for local voices, job safeguards against outsider influx, and the 6th schedule's autonomous councils to guard tribal essence, echoing a fight that simmered since the 1980s.
Most significantly, what the 6th schedule does gives fleeting powers with respect to certain subjects to the autonomous district councils, which also have something called regional councils underneath. What are important in that are, one, the land use. They can, except for land acquisition purpose, where the state has the power to interfere. But otherwise, land use with respect to determination of agricultural and non-agricultural land is determined by the ADCs, the autonomous district councils, including the regional councils. Two are the laws: inheritance, marriage, divorce, including the procedural laws. They can forego all the courts and they can constitute their own courts with their own judges and have their legal process be pertaining to their own laws they have made.
The demands of the people of Ladakh are important because some of their concerns need to be addressed by the center. They are worried about the sixth schedule. They are worried about employment opportunities. They are worried about concerns of socio-economic development.
Following the unrest, the centre has engaged through the high-powered committee. The Ministry of Home Affairs has called a fresh meeting of the high-powered committee on the 6th of October in Delhi to address long-standing political demands. But the Leh apex body and Kargil Democratic Alliance have pulled out, criticising Article 371 as a watered-down fix that ignores full sixth schedule powers. In response, the government has reaffirmed its openness to dialogue with the Leh apex body and Kargil Democratic Alliance at any time through the high-powered committee or other platforms.
I think it's very important that the center continues with its progressive talks with the representatives of Ladakh. Some of the Ladakhis feel that they've been raising this issue over the last 6 years. Obviously, the steps to bring in the sixth schedule requires a lot more consideration, a lot more process, a lot more procedure, and more importantly, it has to be brought about with a constitutional amendment. So these are processes. But the most important thing to the people of Ladakh is how do you increase your socio-economic growth yardstick, and that is important.
While a breakdown of trust between the locals and government looms, the expectation is for the meeting to yield a solution that propagates stability and calm.
The population of Leh is patriotic. Therefore, we need to work towards a solution which keeps the situation under control and keeps the Ladakhis satisfied with a sense of fairness and reasonableness. We cannot govern high-handedly or with arrogance towards their demands. We need to very sympathetically, sensitively address those demands to the extent reasonably possible. So the outcome has to be a solution which leads to stability, peace, and calm.
I think there's an agenda put forward by the committee which would be there, and their agenda points of the people are primarily the sixth schedule, the statehood for it, I would even say what is that other thing that they have been wanting? The Public Service Commission is one of the demands that comes along with it. So there are certain things which they've been wanting it. 2 Lok Sabha seats is what they've been looking for. Job opportunities for locals is what they've been looking for. So these are certain on the agenda, but I'm sure discussions will take place.
Ladakh's location facing China and Pakistan makes it strategically critical. Maintaining strong local government ties is key to security, as disruptions could be exploited by twin adversaries.
Ladakh is a frontline state. As we all know, it borders both China and Pakistan. You have these two separate regions, the Leh and Kargil, both comprising the Ladakh Union Territory. A population a little less than 3 lakhs, almost you can say 50%, a little more in Kargil and a little less in the Buddhist region of Leh. Kargil is dominated by Shia Muslims and Leh is dominated by the Buddhists. In that context, the army is there. We have a huge setup of the armed forces over there. As a result of which, we have excellent relations, excellent people, excellent relations.
See, there are severe challenges to our security in Ladakh. Both our enemies would like to meddle and fish in troubled waters, as they say. So we have to be careful. Yet, the reasonable aspirations have to be met as promised.
The sixth schedule has provided safeguards in the northeast for decades. In Ladakh, locals deem it would prevent outsider-driven development that threatens ecology and demographics. The hope is that the power corridors of Delhi would look beyond partial provisions of Article 371 and impart concessions.
Ladakh is a very important part of the country with respect to strategic and national security importance. It shares border with Pakistan and China, which are high conflict zones where we have border management issues, like how strategically important Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep are. So keeping that in mind, the concessions possible, I will say probably 3. First being they explore the full benefit of the Article 240 which they are a part of, where the President is given a power to make regulations with respect to peace, progress and good government of the Union territory. So they can try to put their demands to ensure the President makes regulations where their interests are covered. That is the first probability, that they continue the Union territory status and seek or reap the benefits of Article 240, which they already have, along with Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman Diu, and of course Pondicherry. Second probability is that they ask for full statehood and seek benefit under 371A. Third possibility is what they are demanding for. They ask for full statehood and benefit of Schedule 6. These are the 3 possibilities.
As Ladakh stands at a critical crossroads 5 years after its Union territory status, the unresolved demands for 6th schedule safeguards, statehood and local protections have fueled a cycle of protests. This agitation, rooted in fears of demographic shifts, resource exploitation and cultural erosion in a strategically vital region bordering China and Pakistan, is an alarm. India cannot afford unrest in Ladakh.
Looking forward to a visit that could quietly redefine South Asia's balance of power. For the first time since the Taliban seized control of Kabul, Afghanistan's Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi is set to land in New Delhi with a rare UN waiver in hand and a clear message to the region. India doesn't recognize the Taliban, but it's choosing engagement over exclusion. Humanitarian aid continues, diplomatic channels are cautiously opening, and as Delhi prepares to host Muttaqi, the question is simple. Can dialogue without recognition still deliver strategic dividends? Here's what's at stake.
For the first time since the Taliban's return to power in 2021, a senior Taliban minister will be landing in New Delhi. Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, once under global sanctions, now has a special UNSC travel exemption valid between the 9th of October and 16th of October. The clearance wasn't routine. Muttaqi remains on the UN sanctions list, banned from travel, asset use, and arms. But the coming week, the Security Council Committee with Pakistan as its chair gave the nod. It's a rare consensus and a significant signal. The visit, on paper, is about humanitarian and developmental assistance. But in reality, it's about strategy, security, and shifting sands of geopolitics. Since 2021, India has supplied over 50,000 tons of wheat, 330 tons of medicines and vaccines, keeping a lifeline open for millions of Afghans. This is no ordinary visit. It comes days after the Moscow format talks, where Afghanistan for the first time will attend as a full member alongside India, Russia, China, Iran and Pakistan. And after Moscow, Muttaqi's next stop is New Delhi. So what does India want? And what does the Taliban hope to get? At stake is the next chapter of South Asia's most complex relationship. Delhi doesn't officially recognize the Taliban government. But beneath the public silence, quiet diplomacy has been in motion. And the first signs emerged in Dubai last year when Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri met Muttaqi. And just 2 years before that, India reopened its technical team in Kabul in 2022. And the upcoming visit is the most visible outcome of this back-channel engagement. For India, this is about more than goodwill. It's about security and strategic depth. After the Pahalgam terror attack in April that killed 26 tourists, Delhi's message is clear: no more terror launchpad. No more sanctuary for Pakistan-based groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed on Afghan soil. India will seek assurances from Muttaqi that Afghan soil won't be used for terror attacks against India. And also seek that the Taliban will act against globally designated terrorists, including Masood Azhar and Hafiz Saeed. It's a conversation India could only once have about the Taliban. But now tables have turned. It's happening with the Taliban. But there's another angle, and that is geopolitical competition. Russia recognized the Taliban government in July. China's mining and infrastructure footprints in Afghanistan are expanding rapidly. And Pakistan, which once called Kabul its strategic backyard, is increasingly being sidelined. India doesn't want to be left behind.
There is an old Indian saying that he who would be emperor of Hindustan must first control Kabul. Now, the reason for this statement is that all the invasions of India took place from Afghanistan. The last, of course, was the British who came by the sea. So therefore, Kabul and Afghanistan became very important, have been always very important for India. And this continues even now. Now, today, it's not a question of controlling Kabul, but it's a question of ensuring that the open spaces in Kabul, in Afghanistan, are not used for fostering terrorism against India. And therefore, good relations with Afghanistan are strategically very important for India to make sure that no hostile action comes from Afghanistan's side.
India's approach today is far from the 1990s when New Delhi shut its doors after the Taliban takeover. Now it's a pragmatic engagement balancing moral concerns with security realities. The Taliban too comes to India with expectations. They want Delhi's recognition of its government, investments and continuity of aid. They've seen India's role in rebuilding their parliament, the friendship dam, and schools. Taliban knows India builds where others bomb. For Afghanistan, crippled by isolation and sanctions, India offers not just diplomacy but delivery. Humanitarian aid, medicines, food supplies, scholarships, and potential investment in energy and connectivity.
Afghanistan has numerous natural resources which India can harness. But even if we harness it, we face a problem of how do we extricate it, because Pakistan is not going to allow its movement and Iran is under sanctions. So we have a problem in our hand unless, of course, we can start accessing them through Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region of China. That's the only way we can harness them. On the other hand, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, it has a lot to gain from India. Even Afghan armed forces training, which we were doing earlier, we can provide Afghanistan's government officials who are being trained in India. So as far as Afghanistan is concerned, India has a lot to offer. We can actually provide them medical facilities, we can provide them educational facilities. There is numerous things which we can provide.
The discussion is expected to focus on trade, connectivity, and regional integration, with emphasis on using Iran's Chabahar port to give landlocked Afghanistan sea access that bypasses Pakistan. A move that would weaken Islamabad's chokehold on Afghan trade routes. But for New Delhi, this visit also serves another purpose: countering the China-Pakistan axis. While Beijing eyes Afghan minerals and Pakistan dreams of strategic depth, India's message is simple: engagement, not endorsement.
The basic thing about international relations is that everybody follows their own national interests. And there are always ups and downs. You can't say your relations were bad with Bangladesh or your relations are bad with China. Look, there's been an uptick as far as relations with China are concerned. Now, with Afghanistan, we have our own bilateral issues. I think one of the things that will be discussed is the port of Chabahar. Recently, as you know, the US has sort of reimposed the sanctions or lifted the waiver that India had for developing Chabahar port. So how that will impact our trade with Afghanistan and some of the issues that will have to be discussed.
Meanwhile, the global powers are watching. Washington still has eyes on airbase access in Central Asia. Beijing is tightening its Belt and Road hold. And Russia is busy building its new Eurasian club. In this power play, India's calibrated entry could be the most decisive.
United Nations, we recently saw a meeting of Russia, China, Pakistan and Iran to discuss Afghanistan. So that shows that the four countries are thinking and India has been an outsider. But now that Afghanistan is coming to India, it's important because at this point of time, Afghanistan is in the news because the United States wants the Bagram Air Base, which Afghanistan is refusing. China is trying to extricate a lot of minerals from Afghanistan. At this point of time, India and China relations are also improving. So that's also a positive. But at the same time, Pakistan is actually cozying up to US, with which is hoping to get more investments. It's actually looking for another port in Arabian Sea, for which it's looking at funding from United States. Bangladesh is, of course, going through a turbulence, so it doesn't really make a difference. And Bangladesh really has no relevance vis-a-vis Afghanistan as far as India is concerned.
But the road ahead is tricky. Engagement with the Taliban risks normalizing a regime still accused of human rights violations, suppression of women, and targeting minorities. India will have to balance realpolitik with moral standing, a difficult but necessary tightrope. For now, the message from Delhi is measured but clear. India will engage where it must and lead from where it can. Because ignoring Kabul is no longer an option. As Afghanistan's top diplomat lands in the national capital, it's not recognition that's on the table, it's relevance, security, and influence. From the ruins of the past wars to the corridors of cautious diplomacy, New Delhi is looking forward to a new diplomatic chapter with Taliban.